Coming up on Chopper's Political Podcast.
When did you last speak to Keir Starmer?
He just looked at me like I was an alien. I mean, he often does.
Welcome back to Chopper's Political Podcast, where I bring you the best guest gossip, news and stories from our studio at GB News here in the heart of Westminster. Today I've got two very interesting guests for you. One politician who is fighting with her own party, and the other also a politician who is fighting the Russians. The fallout from last week's seismic ruling by the Supreme Court has continued to dominate the chat in Westminster about the definition of a woman, as eventually this week we got to hear Sir Keir Starmer's view about it at Prime Minister's Question Time. Much of the chat has swirled around the figure of Rosie Duffield MP. Now, she was elected an MP last July, then left the party last September after being ostracised for her stand for women in the trans debate. At the Prime Minister's Questions session this week, the PM even refused to apologise to Duffield. I'll be hearing from her directly on this podcast about what that felt like. And later, as the attention once again focuses on the war between Russia and Ukraine, I'll be speaking with a former Tory MP who has spent the past 3 months in Ukraine after signing up to fight the Russians. You won't want to miss that. He's Jack Lepresti, who was formerly the MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke until July last year, and he'll be here also in the studio at GB News in Westminster. But first, that Supreme Court ruling which appeared to settle that debate between women and trans women about what is a woman in this day and age. The row has consumed certain parts of Westminster, and one MP at the heart of that controversy has been former Labour MP for Canterbury, who now sits as an independent MP, Rosie Duffield. And Rosie Duffield joins me now on Chopper's Political Podcast. We're going to talk about this week and last week. It's been a big time for you. Many would say you've been vindicated in your struggle on what is a woman. Just going back to Prime Minister's Questions this week, is Kevin Baird not right when she said to Keir Starmer, do you have the balls to back women?
She was quite forthright, wasn't she? I think it would be nice to see a clear statement from Keir Starmer, a clear belief, or, something that we could see is definitely not necessarily an apology to women, but an explanation as to why he hasn't been more clear so far. He's flip-flopped around this for the last few years, and
and even in the past week since that ruling in the Supreme Court, he did, I think, a dozen tweets on social media, not one about this big. The topic of the week has been that ruling.
I think him and a lot of the people in the cabinet now have always seen it as a fringe issue. They wish it would go away. It's a bit awkward, a bit difficult to talk about. It was a culture war, and that, it wasn't really up there with the important political subjects. But actually, people's everyday lives have been affected by things like access to sport and changing rooms. So it is important.
And that's why it also goes to the heart of what is a woman and the fight that women have had for the past 100 years for equality. How did it feel when he wouldn't apologise to you? Of course, it was a Tory asking a Labour person to apologise. That's always a difficult conversation, but he wouldn't say sorry, would he?
Nothing's changed. If I was, as a politician, to be asked the same thing, he's been asked, for 3, 4, 5 years even, has he spoken to me? Has he apologised to me? What's our relationship like? To nip that story in the bud, usually your advisor just sort of write a statement or just say, just issue a bit of an apology or say something nice. And politically, he's let it spin out for all these years. It's just a bit mad. I don't need an apology, but politically, and even it would be nice manners if he did just sort of speak to me or say, it was really difficult for you. Just an acknowledgement, I guess.
In PMQs, the camera editor filmed you shaking your head. Let's have a look at your reaction to that.
So will he now apologise to the member for Canterbury, the very brave member for Canterbury, for hounding her out of the Labour Party simply for telling the truth?
Mr. Speaker, I've always approached this on the basis that we should treat everyone with dignity and respect, whatever their different views.
So you saw the reaction there. You're just shaking your head and slightly scowling, I'm afraid, Rosie. What were you thinking?
I can't say what I was thinking because it's a bit rude, but I was trying to get my questions sorted because I was bobbing up and down for
You were trying to get in, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, right, I've got to make this quick because he's taking a long time to answer things. And, you know, I might have kind of a minute or something to get this question right. So I was trying to do that. But also I was doing a bit of eye rolling because it is just quite frustrating.
Why won't you say sorry? Yeah. The dinosaur brooch? Is that one of your kids gave it to you? Was that a message?
No, they didn't. I think I bought it in a shop in Whitstable, actually. It was just basically a bit of fun because my friends watching I thought that would have amused them.
Why is that? Because you've been called a dinosaur?
We've been called dinosaurs, haven't we? No, it's not anything I hold against David Lammy. He meant it as a kind of off-the-cuff comment and we've embraced it. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, you're a Tyrannosaurus Rex for a lot of women, I think.
Exactly.
When did you last speak to Keir Starmer?
Oh, gosh. Just before the election, there were months and months of negotiation about whether we could have a conversation. And one of the whips managed to get me in front of him. And I think I had 17 minutes. And that was after 4 years of trying.
So May last year, May or June last year?
Something like that. I couldn't exactly tell you when, probably May. And he just looked at me like I was an alien. I mean, he often does. I don't think he has any concept of this particular issue or what people in the party have been put through over it, actually. And we're not just, it doesn't really matter what happens to me. I've got a good job and a platform, but we're talking about the Darlington nurses, the case that everyone knows about.
What's that, remind us again of that?
So it was nurses who simply wanted to change their uniform and, you know, women have issues that are intimate. They don't necessarily want to change in front of a man. And a male doctor was permitted to use the
in the changing room.
Yeah, in the changing room as them. And they've brought a court case. They've brought a tribunal. And hopefully they'll win that.
Well, we'll see where this ruling takes us. But why doesn't he get, just finally on Keir Starmer, he just sees it as a Tory culture war? Is that what he thinks it is? Is it a right-left battle?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's partly that, but if I'm being absolutely honest, I think we're always accused of being out of touch. If you talk to ordinary people, this issue does come up. And not
men and women or just women?
Men and women, taxi drivers, you know, ordinary people that you should speak to in your constituency on a daily basis. No matter which side of the argument they're on, they'll still discuss it. It's still interesting to them. And I find it hard to believe that Keir is so far removed. Obviously now he's Prime Minister, it's very different. But as an ordinary MP or even the leader of the opposition, I'm just surprised he didn't understand how many people felt so strongly and how many different groups were invested. So he does seem to be almost completely unaware of all of the different sets of people that have been affected by this, like sports and clubs and things.
And it goes to the heart of what a woman is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very...
Yeah.
Basically.
You'd think so. But I mean, schools, teaching, I had one MP friend who's now moved on who said that her daughter was told that there were 73 genders. This is an MP who had to then write to the school as a parent. You know, all of this stuff's been going on for the last few years. It's been all around us.
How did you feel when that ruling came out last week from the Supreme Court?
I think I can speak for most of my family's friends who are involved with it. We were obviously elated and relieved, but then actually we've been exhausted by it all. It's taken its toll, and a lot of people have been quite alone in the last few days, if I'm honest.
Yeah, a bit flat, because of, well, how it's implemented is the key question next. Some vindication, though.
Yeah, but then we see those placards calling for various people's death or to be, you know, urinated on. That's not nice.
What was this?
There was a big protest
in
Parliament
Square. And the adored words on the suffragette statues, which is slightly... have you been reached out to by any Labour women? Have they said, Rosie?
Only my friends, but nobody that's now claiming that they always agreed on the issue.
Yeah, and you know your friends are. J.K. Rowling been in touch?
Of course, yeah.
You're on a WhatsApp group? What did she say?
Yeah, I can't tell you what she says, but you know, we're in a friends group. Yeah.
She's been criticised for posing with a cigar. I think a celebrity called Pedro Pascal called her a heinous loser. What's your message to Pedro Pascal?
Anything but a loser. That's obvious.
Because I think that the celebs do get behind this, don't they? We saw the way J.K. Rowling was disowned by her own
But I think that is an
cast.
important point, Chris. This is an issue of privilege, and that goes to the top of politics as well. If you are not someone whose daughter has to go to a swimming meeting at 5 a.m, normally you're driving them there and you're worried about where they're changing. If you're not an ordinary low-paid teaching assistant who is now worried that you won't be able to change or won't be able to teach what you know to be true, it's ordinary workers whose names we don't know. know. And people that are supposed to traditionally be able to trust Labour, it's ordinary people who have awful circumstances, might be trafficked, might be involved in a partner who's abusive or has dealt drugs and they end up in prison. Those women need a voice, need us to stand up for them. So it's not people like me that are really disadvantaged. It's working women and men who just want to know and be able to speak about the truth. That's why it's so infuriating that the Labour Party think of it as a kind of niche issue. It's not. It's ordinary people.
So that in your world, they're out of touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that almost just the efforts you put in to support women, you think of those people you're describing there. That's why you're doing it.
Yeah.
What do you think of Labour ministers like Angela Eagle, Chris Bryant, reportedly unhappy about Baroness Falconer, the EHRC chair, who supports the ruling?
Well, it's no surprise. I mean, they're part of LGBT Labour, and they're the LGBT Labour sort of bit of the Labour Party, and they've been campaigning against people like me for years and don't understand the issue. I don't think they've probably spoken to many women's rights groups or activists to understand why we're so upset about the whole thing.
And Baroness Falconer's contract is up on the 30th of November this year.
Yeah.
That is going to become a big row this year.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I know that the Women and Equality Select Committee, which I sit on, are going to be sort of touching on her appointment, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
She had a contract extended by a year, so it looks like they're going to have to find a new candidate to take that role. And how it's implemented is absolutely crucial now, isn't it? Because I think Lord Sumption said it only applies narrowly to the Equality Act 2010.
Yeah.
But others say there's a wider
of course,
definition here.
Huge implications. The NHS, the hospital wards, all of those things.
But does it though?
Defined in the Equality Act. I think so.
You think you should do, but how that's applied though is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, these people that are complaining in WhatsApp groups, the politicians, nothing's changed. That law is a 15-year-old law that Stonewall were advising companies and government departments to implement it wrongly. Everyone else has actually just got the law wrong, which is what the judges told for in Scotland. So we're just sticking to the Equality Act.
I mean, for many, it just is simply saying what everyone thinks. I mean, it does seem to...
It is.
It's a strange row to be having.
Also, nobody wants to marginalise protected trans people.
Well, just on that, I mean, do you have friends who are trans? Because
of course I do.
They are... I know... I'm sure they're vulnerable people. They've been through a lot. They've had to...
want to go through that. Would
No, it's extremely complicated.
Yeah.
So there's a humanity to this, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what do you say to them then when they see you as someone fighting against their rights?
Nothing to worry about. Nothing is changing. Everyone has human rights. So trans rights, human rights, women's rights. But we did have a clash where women needed dignity and privacy from a male body. We weren't being given it. And that's what we've been fighting for since time began. And we're just saying that's what the Equality Act gave us. Let's please stick to that so we've got our own dignity again.
And they understand that, do they, when you say it?
I don't know. I mean, the people that I'm friends with would do. And yeah, absolutely. If they're trans people, they've kind of been on our side of the argument. But again, they're not the ones yelling, so they're not probably known about so much.
Is it a right and left issue? It just seems, I don't know why it is. It seems that the Conservatives appear to be on your team against the left.
But if you look at newspapers like the Morning Star, even the Communist Party, that's what baffles me about some of our left-wing politicians that are meant to be fighting for the ordinary worker, because it's quite a Marxist idea that the Communist Party, embraced, that actually we are all fair and equal, but at the same time, women need our space. And if you read their statement, they're very clear on it, actually.
They support
the Communist Party of Britain.
You're basically a communist now.
Not necessarily me, but, the idea behind the Equality Act, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Has the fight been worth it? I mean, I've been talking to you on podcasts for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
Had an emotional chats in the past. I think you seem much more on the front foot today than in the past when you were left on your own.
It's worth it if we can protect ordinary women and girls and men as well from just talking about the truth, telling the truth, from calling a woman what a woman is, being able to sort of, go to physical checks with doctors or change or go to the right bit of a prison and a women's refuge without being frightened that a man will turn up. That's worth it, of course, yeah.
But it's been quite a big toll on you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's dominated the last few years. Which,
it's derailed
of other work, but this is the only thing that I'm ever really...
It kind of derails your advancements of the party. Well, you're a PPC, weren't you? You're an aide with PPS when you came in. The first rung of the ladder.
I think given what I've achieved politically in my own constituency, traditionally I probably would have been in line for some kind of job, but that was never going to happen under Labour, not at the moment. And they're like their family members that they put straight into the front bench.
Sure, lots of that, don't they?
Yeah,
Lots of
I've
elections.
never actually served a day as an MP before, but when you've really worked hard, there are a lot of women on the backbench with a lot of experience that are never going to get anywhere close.
And you've had abuse, may I say, since last week.
Yeah, of course.
Can you say any of it? I mean, we can bleep out the horrible bits.
It's, mostly on social media, and the C word gets used quite a lot and that sort of stuff. I'm used to that now, really. And if someone tweets a death threat, you're never going to take that seriously, because it's the people who don't tweet it that you've got to be
Worry about.
Yeah.
Because you have had a target on your back a bit. There's being like J.K. Rowling, if I may say so, and other women journalists too, I think.
Yeah. Women journalists definitely as well.
Stood up for this.
Absolutely, yeah.
And your children have suffered?
No, they're thankfully
Thankfully.
completely private and don't get involved in politics.
Totally right.
Yeah.
But do you feel safe walking around?
It depends. I mean, we all have to have security, sort of, we have to tell the police where we are all the time, that sort of thing. Most women MPs, I would say. In fact, probably most MPs. David Amos wasn't a woman, so we do have to think about those things, sadly.
It's very, very sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's normal now, though, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think all this, the heart of it is, my children always say, being woke is about being kind to people. It's being kind. Yeah. But it's where you have that grit in the oyster between, as you say, the changing rooms.
Yeah, and women deserve kindness too.
Well, exactly. It's not all one-way kindness.
And seeing some men yelling at us and about us, because we're standing up for women's rights, that's not kind.
No. What's your future like? I mean, we talked before, the rumours that you may become a Conservative. That never happened. That's gone away now, hasn't it?
No, I was asked that again this morning. And to be fair, the Tories are always very supportive. Kenny is a friend of mine, and but we're ideologically very different. And I got elected as a Labour MP. My values are that of the Labour Party, as was before they turned into sort of an austerity party. And they've been a huge letdown to me and lots of other backbenchers.
Yes.
There's a lot of disquiet in the Labour Party.
Well, yes, and
none of us are about to join the Tory party.
No, so you want me to stay as independent, will you?
Yeah, for now, absolutely.
For now? So
I'd like to be able to go to the Labour Party at some point, but that's not on the cards under Keir's leadership.
So he's got to go for you to get back in.
Possibly.
But your background, you left school with few qualifications, your apprenticeship at Guy's.
Yeah.
You were a political satire writer.
Oh, yeah.
What was that about?
I was in a team of people writing comedy for puppets, and I was writing comedy sketches and stuff. It was similar to Spitting Image, and but when Trump came in, we were writing really ridiculous sketches, and then he would do something even more silly and ridiculous, and it did kill satire for a bit, and then I got accidentally elected, so that had to.
Then,
yeah. That's
how you were meant to win it in Canterbury back in 2017, and you were a teaching assistant. I mean, it's not a normal career. You're not like other political spads who become MPs, are you? And that's maybe why you found.
I'm not in a clique.
Not in a clique. No. And this, what will be your political epitaph? I mean, this is going to dominate, isn't it? I mean,
yes, so yeah.
I was talking to people like Bill Cash previously when he was an MP, and he said that the MPs who make most change aren't actually ministers. They're the ones who stand for things that matter. And he mentioned Wilberforce on slavery, and he thinks that by being out of government, he fought for a thing that mattered to him all his life, which is Brexit, and achieved it. And you're getting into that bracket, aren't you?
Possibly. I mean, there are loads of other things I want to do. I came into Parliament to stop and reverse the 2-child limit, and I haven't done very well on that. The Labour Party seem wedded to keeping those benefit caps. So,
well, Rosie Duffield, thank you for coming in and joining us on a busy Thursday and telling us your story.
Thank you, Chris.
Come again?
Yes.
With me now is Jack Lepresti, the former Conservative MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke. Jack, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Your first time here. Great to have you here
thank you.
At GB News. Now, most people, when they stop being MPs, they just go and they get a job somehow, perhaps using some of their experience in politics, or they get on the board of something or other. But you've done something different, haven't you? What have you been up to?
Well, I decided probably a year, 18 months ago, looking at the oncoming political landscape as it has transpired, that it would be tough to be re-elected. You never ever give up on hope in politics or internal optimists. But, the chances were it was going to be a difficult one. So I thought, well, if that were to happen, I'd go to Ukraine. I'd either work for an NGO or a charity. But actually, if I'm really honest with myself, I knew I'd probably end up in the military if they had me.
But why Ukraine then? Because you formerly served with the UK Army Reserve.
I went to Ukraine for the first time for the year anniversary, completely inspired by, the resilience of the people and what they were trying to do, i.e. remain a free, independent, sovereign country, like we all do. And so I got involved with all party groups in Parliament. I've always had a defence interest, and I kept returning to Ukraine. So it wasn't a difficult decision, actually, to say that if I suddenly found myself not in politics, I'd end up doing what I could to help as much as I could.
And so you signed up to join the International Legion of Ukraine
Yeah.
in defence intelligence.
Well, I initially applied online. They have a website, and I just applied online.
There's a website.
There's a website.
And you're not Ukrainian.
No. There's a website.
You're British, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
am
clear you're British.
Yeah. Born in Bristol, Southmead Hospital. I went on the website for the International Legion, made an application, bit of background, some of the stuff I'd done many years ago in the British Army, not that much, but a bit. And then I had a call or an email back, a week, 10 days, quite efficient, from two regiments. One was a training regiment, one was an infantry regiment. So I was going to go to Poland and have interviews for that. And then a friend of mine rang me from the Ukrainian embassy here, because obviously I was quite well known to them because I'd done a lot of work in Parliament and around. And my former constituency, is a big defence constituency, and the procurement for Ukraine is being organised from there. They're doing an amazing job. So anyway, my friend rang me and said, I understand you've applied for the International Legion. I said, yes, I told you back in July. I don't think he took me seriously at the time. And he said, we must have a chat.
So that was in the wake of the election. The boy thought he was having a bit of a meltdown.
Yeah,
Let's
quite
move on.
Quite possibly. He's coming to terms with it. So we met, and he said, look, you've got a lot of experience in international relations and politics, procurement, you've done some military service. Why didn't you come and join defence intelligence and, continue doing what you're doing, but doing it as a Ukrainian soldier, as a volunteer, and that would suit us better because it would be more sensible to use your experience you have.
Yeah.
And so that was November, quite, a process of background checks, admin, all the usual stuff. So I signed on the 16th of January.
And here you are now, and you're wearing some form of uniform. Let's explain to the listeners what you're wearing.
Well, I've got a T-shirt with the Legion with my unit's emblem, the military intelligence.
And that is a skull with a knife going through it, and an eagle.
It's an owl.
And that was an owl.
I thought it was an eagle, but
It's an owl, right?
And
this jacket you're wearing, it's marked with the colours of Ukraine.
And, in Ukraine it says freedom can be stopped, and the trident. It's not an issued uniform. We don't tend to wear uniform in Kyiv. I do when I go east, get involved in stuff. But I wanted something I could wear and be identified as, flying the flag for Ukraine. So
Goodness gracious, and that's in you're in London wearing that. And are you a paid member of the? Yeah, it's a job.
I'm a serving
it's
soldier.
A job. You're a serving soldier. I'm so sorry, Jack. I'm just
getting
working
paid
through
every
it.
month, and everybody else.
Yeah. And how big is the International Legion?
Well, it's not entirely clear how many there are, but there are quite a number. And even if I knew, I probably couldn't tell you anyway.
How many Brits are in it?
I'm not sure. And even
dozens.
Oh yeah,
dozens of Brits are in it.
A lot of Brits
who've signed up through the internet.
Yeah,
and been accepted,
and are doing all sorts of jobs.
And the government is a bit sniffy about this.
Well,
I thought they were saying when the war broke out, they were saying don't go and defend Ukraine, weren't they, to Brits?
I think there was a bit of confusion right at the beginning because Liz said when she was from
Liz Truss,
that it was okay for people to go and help, but I think traditionally it's always been discouraged. So there is some legislation which says technically it could be perceived to be an offence, but it hasn't been enforced or acted upon since the Spanish Civil War. Lots of people have.
That was in the 40s.
Yeah, and lots of people have
30s.
served in the French Foreign Legion, the Spanish Foreign Legion. There's been no consequences. And we are training thousands of Ukrainians as we speak here.
In the
Tens
UK,
of thousands, over the last few years. So it would be a bit odd.
Yes.
And I'm working with the Ukrainian government, doing a bit with some of my former colleagues. Yesterday we had a meeting with drone manufacturers.
Of course, that's the big issue, drones. What, in the UK?
Yeah, I'm basically here this week for work. I'm having a week's leave next week. I'm going back to Ukraine with a charity I'm involved in called Ukrainian Action, who've been doing a convoy every 2 weeks for the last 3 years.
Wow.
Amazing. And I'm a patron on their veterans welfare.
Yes.
One of my responsibilities in the military is to look at veterans welfare and help some of the charities I was already working on.
Yeah. And if I may say so, you're 55.
I am.
You're a bit older than me. I only mention your age because that's quite an old soldier. I mean, are you?
There was somebody older than me when I went and did all the paperwork and admin. A guy from the West Country, and he was looking forward to being in logistics and stores and doing all that.
So are you meeting Russians on the front line? Are you fighting Russians?
I've been east. I haven't seen any Russians. I haven't engaged, but I've been involved.
East means east of Kiev.
Oh yeah, Zaporizhzhia, Donbass. But
So that's into the where the fighting is.
Yeah. And I've been doing drone operations and some patrols and things like that.
Gosh.
And I've actually, even as a civilian prior to Christmas, me and Jeff from Ukrainian Action, we drove a British ambulance to Sumy,
Gosh.
loaded full of kit.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to try and do when I go is drive a vehicle, get it to Kyiv, takes about 3 days. And
Yeah.
then Jeff and I will go and deliver it to the front somewhere.
Wow.
They're very, very keen, very desperate for vehicles.
Have you, can I say, shot a gun?
I haven't fired a weapon now.
I mean, you're putting yourself at risk here, aren't you?
Well, I suppose.
If you're caught by the Russians, you'd be a high-profile prisoner.
I don't think being as close as that is being encouraged, to be
Yes.
honest. But I am getting out and about and seeing what I can and do.
And you speak Ukrainian?
I'm learning Ukrainian. I don't even ask me. It's a very difficult language.
It's Cyrillic. The text is difficult.
You've got to start with the alphabet. It's not like learning French or Italian, where you can sort of start practicing one of the Latin languages. You've got to start from the real basics of what the alphabet means and works and how it sounds. And I'm having a couple of lessons a week at least.
And you're a dad, aren't you?
I am. I've got 4 wonderful children.
And what do they say when they say Dad's gone to war?
The older ones are okay. Because, don't forget, I've been going to Ukraine for 2 years now, quite regularly. Even after.
Before that, no contact with the country, though, in a meaningful way?
No, not really. No, the first time I went was on a parliamentary delegation for the year anniversary.
So you're stirred by the fight?
I was inspired by it. I just
Why
thought
not?
this is amazing. It's a beautiful country, wonderful people, and they're fighting for their own existence.
So what are the children saying to you? You're in your 50s. It's obviously a midlife crisis, Dad. You know nothing about Ukraine. Now you're fighting against the Russians. What is going on?
I had an interview for the World at One, and the guy said, "Are you having a midlife crisis?" And I think that's very funny. I said, "No, I've had one of those before, and this definitely isn't it. I'm doing what I can."
Yeah, I wasn't being flippant.
No, it's fine. No, not
Wasn't
at all.
trying to
No,
be.
not at all. It's very funny. But no, I'm just doing what I can to help. So the 3 older ones, I've seen me go backwards and forwards over the last couple of years. They were aware and around when I did my military service before I was elected.
Yeah.
I served for the British Army, did a year of full service, went to Afghanistan.
So you did tours of duty with them?
Yeah, I did. I did a tour of the Tree Commander Brigade back in 2008-9.
Right.
So one of my sons is in the military.
Okay, so it's a military family.
I haven't. Clifford, I sort of, he said, "You're living in Ukraine." I said, "Yeah, I'm working. I'm helping the government."
Yeah, exactly. Because he's younger.
Yeah. So I don't want to unduly worry him, but he knows I'm away. He knows I'm working, and that's fine.
You met Zelensky? Has he said hi?
As a member of Parliament, I've been in a room in a meeting with him. But I haven't met him since I've started my service.
No, it must find it fascinating to see someone who, quite close to the
I'm
establishment.
sure I will in some time.
And are we being told the full story of the war in Ukraine? Now, I asked that question because the awful term, but let's use it, meat grinder, that's used by Trump to describe what's going on the front line. There's lots of lives being lost. According to Trump, there's a couple of thousand being lost on both sides every week, and he wants to end the killing. Is that the reality of the war?
Well, everybody wants to end the war.
Yes.
I wish that Trump and J.D. Vance would go and visit Ukraine, to be honest. I tell you, as near to the front line as is possible. So it is awful, difficult, and there are lots of people losing their lives. But people, Ukraine isn't losing. They've had pretty static lines for the last 2 years. And the meat grinders, basically the Russian tactics, always has been traditionally. They don't really care about their people or the casualties. It's just throwing people into the guns, as it were. And the Ukrainians are doing an amazing job holding the line, fighting that off, taking some territory from time to time. And they are not going to be bullied by Trump or Putin into accepting some sort of sellout when they're no longer an independent free country.
Yeah, well, obviously this changes by the day, but as things stand on Thursday this week, and it may change overnight when Trump speaks again in the Oval Office on Thursday night, but it looks like that Trump wants Ukraine to accept the loss permanently of Crimea, and maybe other lands. Is that right?
I understand that, the Ukrainian constitution, anyway, from a legal point of view, doesn't allow for territory to be given away. But from a strategic and even a moral point of view, the idea that somebody can march into somebody else's country, kill people, civilians, commit war crimes, kidnap children. Over 20,000 Ukrainian kids have been taken to Russia, and do all that. I mean, last night was a war crime, what happened in Ukraine. Targeting civilians specifically. The idea that you can be rewarded by being given what you've actually acquired.
Taken by force.
Yeah. It's just astonishing that an American president is advocating.
Why do you think he doesn't understand the Ukrainian point of view? Why they think it's appropriate to frankly, beat up Zelensky in the Oval Office in that way?
I don't think he understands that the Ukrainians are prepared to fight without his help, and they will, because they're fighting for their own existence and survival.
He says they can't, of course.
Well, I think
that's his position.
Well, go and visit, I would say.
Yeah.
Go and have a look. Send some of your senior people, and just get a sense of how committed these people are to remain free and independent and not under Putin's boot. So, so there is that. But also, Trump says and some of his administration obviously are concerned about China. The biggest green light for dictators everywhere is for Putin to be rewarded for what he's done. Right. When I did a delegation as a member of parliament to Washington around 18 months ago to talk to Republican Congress people about the aid package.
Because back then it was getting wobbly.
It was held up. It wouldn't be put to the floor to be voted on.
That's right.
And, I was with Ian Duncan Smith, who came up with the phrase. He said, the road to Taiwan leads through Ukraine, right? Our enemies, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, are looking at what's happening. They saw the debacle in Afghanistan. We're not prepared to fight for our values. We'll get tired. We'll give up. And that encouraged Putin to invade Ukraine. He got away with invading Crimea. I mean, this war's been going on for 10 years.
Well, the Crimea invasion just wasn't properly dealt with by the West, was it? The Tory government didn't do well there at all.
Georgia was first during the last days of the Labour administration. But, it's not a party political issue. He got away with that. And then Crimea. Now Ukraine. And do we really think, when he's actually said publicly, he's written books about it, that Putin talks about the restoration of the Russian Empire?
Soviet Union.
Do you think he will stop if he were, heaven forbid, to gain?
So what's at stake here with this deal is you have to draw a line in the sand and say to Putin, this is as far as you're going to go. If you have to go back to the original borders of Ukraine.
Well, that's for ultimately the Ukrainian people to decide, but there has to be some sort. I'd like to see reparations. I want those kids returned. I want Putin in front of the International Criminal Court. Okay, none of those. The last point in particular isn't realistic for where we stand at the moment.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a cost. There needs to be punishment, retribution, and dictators have to be beaten. You and I, we both love and enjoy reading history. Dictators have to be beaten, because even if you get a frozen conflict, we know what Putin will do. He'll recruit, he'll arrest, he'll rearm, and he'll come back again because he got away with it the first time, or the second time, or the third time.
And what's the answer here? So we're going to be starting to support this reassurance force, it's been called now.
Yeah, I think it's great what the government are doing. We had the 100-year agreement, which was a solid legal commitment
made by Labour. There's no really political difference.
There's
on
no,
this, is there?
There isn't. It isn't a party political issue at all.
Rightly so, you might think.
Yeah, absolutely. It shouldn't be.
Well, there's some are saying we are giving a lot of money to Ukraine. We can't mend roads here, hospitals here. All the challenges of being an MP. Why can't we pay for that?
I remember speaking in more than one occasion in debates about defence spending and quoting a Labour chancellor saying, Dennis Healey, who was a beach commander at Anzio, if you don't spend money on defence, there's no point spending money on, I paraphrase, but that's what he said.
That's the point.
The defence is the most important responsibility. You've got to keep your country free, secure, and your people safe.
And what's next for Jack the Presley?
Well, I'm here for, I'm having some leave next week, going back to the West Country. And then I'm going back to Ukraine. And then I'm going to stay there for as long as I'm needed.
What, are you fulfilled by it? What's the word to describe your new job?
I feel satisfied, and I'm very honoured and lucky that I'm in a position where I can help. If they wouldn't have accepted me in the military, I'd have driven a truck, moved boxes, I'd have done whatever. So I'm pleased that I'm able to do what I can.
Well, Jack the Presley, the former MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke, and now a member. What's your rank in the International Legion of Ukraine?
In the International Legion, we're all privates officially, but I'm doing an officer's job.
An officer, let's call you an officer in the International Legion.
I'm not an officer. But...
All right, a private then. in the international leader of Ukraine. Thanks for joining us today for a fascinating chat on Chopper's Political Podcast. And thank you earlier to Rosie Duffield. And thank you to you for listening as well. I tweet at Christopher Hope on X. Email me, chopper@gbnews.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do tell your friends. If you really enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or to wherever you get your podcast. That helps other people find it who may want to hear more from me at GB News and my guests. Thanks to the brilliant team of GB News colleagues behind this podcast, Mick Booker and Jeff Marsh back at the base camp in Paddington, and here in the studio at Westminster, George McMillan, one of the two worker bees who worked very hard on this podcast. The other bee, Rebecca Nunes, she's buzzed off to Rome to cover the funeral of the Pope this weekend. And if you want more Chopper in your life, and who doesn't, but Rebecca doesn't at the moment, catch me during the week on GB News whenever I pop up with analysis on political news, and occasionally presenting 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. GBN tonight on this channel, certainly in the next week or so. And keep up to date with our best reporting of all our politics on gbnews.com. But until next time, cheerio!